Next, we've got Mr. Caston.
Keeping with the theme of this conference, we're talking about social media and how we connect and grow your ministry via social media. So, for anybody who doesn't know me, Jason Caston, I've developed in iChurch a method, a methodology that has talked about how to grow your ministry. And one of the parts of that is social media, but you kind of gathered from listening to the slide. He talked about social media, but he also talked about, it was other things to it. It was more of a digital ministry perspective with social media playing an important part. So when we're looking at all the parts of how to grow your ministry online, and again, making sure your online experience is just as effective and impactful as your offline experience. With the iChurch method, we talk about websites, multimedia, e-commerce, social media, and mobile. And so one of the key areas is social media. But again, you have to have a full digital strategy when you're looking at how you're going to reach people and grow your online ministry. One of the things that Sly talked about was, how you can consume information. And studies have shown that, we're never more than 2 or 3 feet away from our mobile devices at any given time. So in addition to having an effective social media strategy, you also have an effective mobile strategy. Well, we all know that all of our ministries look to start off with a website. You have to have an effective web strategy that ties into your social media, that ties into, your mobile, and of course, e-commerce with your online giving and stuff like that. And so with all these things put together, this is when you start to look at all the ways that people consume information and connect with organizations, connect with churches in the digital space. But for today, we're going to talk about social media. So now let's look at this key concept before we get into social media. A lot of people are saying, church attendance is dropping, no one's going to church anymore. And the thing is, it's wouldn't say church attendance is more so decreasing as it's decentralizing. And by that, I mean, it's more so where people are connecting with ministries in different ways, as opposed to I just have to be in the sanctuary during the weekend service from this time to this time and watching the message live. See, when we're looking at how society consumes content and how society consumes information, we're looking at us where everything is customized to how we interact. So by that, when you go watching Netflix, you don't have to watch live shows. You watch shows when you want to, based on what you want to see, and then Netflix recommending what else you think you should see based on what you want to see. Your viewing habits, your experiences are customized to you. On Facebook, we see our Facebook feed, or even on Instagram and Twitter, our news feeds are customized to us. On Google, our search results are customized to us. We start to have this online experience, and in turn, our entire digital experience is customized to us and what we want. And so now when we're looking at our online and our church experience, we're starting to see people want to consume and stay connected with their ministries in ways that are as most beneficial and impactful for them. So while we're looking at how we can grow our churches, and we want to continue to engage and grow our and stay connected with with people, in our church community, we have to look at how many additional ways can we stay connected with them and grow in it, and not just counting who shows up during the weekend services. So now we're looking at this concept of church decentralizing. That's where the importance of conferences like this and the stuff that me and Sly are talking about, where you have to have other ways that you connect with people, because every other organization and every other type of content, every other thing that they want to do in the online space and just their lives in general is customized to them. But the expectation is when it comes to church, because it's God, they're going to just fall in line and do church as it's been done for the last 50 or 100 years. That's not quite how it works, but especially when we say God is omnipotent and God is everywhere. We want to take the gospel around the world and take it to the four corners, except we want those four corners to be in the sanctuary. That's not quite how it works. So when we're looking at today's goals and stuff I want to talk about, I'm going to talk about why social media is important, which networks, how to get started, and just talk about a strategy in addition to where social media is going. And because a lot of the stuff that I talk about, Sly talks about, it's impactful and it's important today, But in a year from now, when we come back to this conference, those things are going to be just as important, but there's going to be other things that we need to talk about, other things that we need to be aware of, because technology, social media specifically, is continually changing. So we're looking at why social media is important. It's one of the most important connection points for ministry and the community. Okay, it's one of the best ways that people can connect with the church, and the church can connect with people. It becomes a two-way conversation, as opposed to the one-way conversation where you come, receive the message, and then you just go ahead about your life. Now you have this two-way conversation where you're interacting with the ministry, and the ministry is interacting with you. It's a place to connect with current members as well as people who are not members. It becomes where, for all my, church folks out there, we're talking the Jews and Gentiles. Okay, you're not just focused on just the church members. You want to talk to everybody and start and make it less of, a membership type club type thing, and start taking the message to everybody, because there are billions of people that are on social media. More people can be reached right where they are. That's the focus. That's when we talk about the Great Commission, we talk about reaching people right where they're at. Social media is one of the most effective ways to do that. And when we think about people going to where people are at, in the traditional sense, we think about missionaries. But now we have this concept of digital missionaries, and this digital missionary field where we can reach people all around the globe, because everybody's connected via, the internet. There are over 3.7 billion people connected to the internet globally. There's over 6 billion mobile devices. 2.8 billion users on social media, and it's growing exponentially, especially in developing countries. So when you think about when you go online, yes, you want to reach your local community, and yes, you want to be impactful, but you do become an international ministry, because it's people all around the world that are looking to connect with and receive the message that your ministry has. And every day there are more new technologies that evolve the way we communicate. And by that, if we're looking at, just for an example, for you all who are watching today, we're watching via, YouTube, streaming on YouTube, or if we're streaming on Facebook as well. If you're watching the rebroadcast of this, that's the type of technology you're using to stay connected and hear this message. But you're not looking to, read it via scrolls, or look at old parchments, or look at stone tablets to, see what we talked about, because that technology was effective at that time. But once the printing press came, then we looked at books, and Bibles got printed in mass, and that took the message to the people in that manner. And now we have the internet and mobile and all these different new evolving technologies is how we get the message out. Unfortunately, a lot of times, a lot of churches have the gaps in leadership adopting these new technologies, not because they don't want to adopt it, but because there's barriers to learning about new technology and how effective it's going to be. Some of your favorite pastors that you love on TV and you watch did not jump on social media, even though their ministries are ahead of the curve now. It appears that they're ahead of the curve. There weren't these ministries and these pastors, especially the older ones, did not jump on social media. They were smart enough to trust their teams to understand these things, but it's not necessarily you see where the pastor is the first one to jump on it, and all of a sudden he's like, yeah, this new Facebook thing is going to take off. No, there are team members that help help the pastor understand how effective this is, a digital ministry tool. And then you start to see the older leadership come around. So don't be weary in your well-doing of trying to convince your older leadership about the importance of these digital ministry tools, because they're used to doing church as they've always done it. So, but if they give you the independence and the wherewithal to be able to utilize these platforms and try and grow that, then do what you can to try and find examples to help them understand and show them that these platforms are effective, impactful, engaging, and growing. So now, but when we're looking at social media, what I want to get to today is it's not just talking about, Facebook and Instagram and just those networks, but you got to look at how to effectively use it. Yes, we could tell you just post, but that's not a strategy. Just posting and hope they come. That's not how it works. Not anymore. Right now, you got to look at a strategy of you have to have paid ads. It's pay to play. Social media is an industry and a for-profit business. So therefore, while it sounds great that they let you sign up for free, that doesn't mean they're going to let you reach people and connect with others for free. It's understandable for churches to say, okay, we're going to do a men's ministry event at the church, and we're going to give you money to order pizzas and give you money to print flyers, and then we'll be able to see tangibly those men come into the sanctuary, and we'll have the men's meeting. But when it comes to the digital space, there seems to be a disconnect in understanding that you have to invest in that ministry just like you invest in the online ministry, just like you invest in the offline ministries. And that's what we're trying to help you understand. And for every online aspect or every online example that we're giving, there's an offline example that we try and correlate it with. When you hear from communicators like me or like Sly or like Taquinda or just a lot of different people that we know, that we try and give offline examples, because that's the way that helps effectively the leadership of churches understand how to apply the digital space to how their traditional offline church experience is. So that's why we talk about that a lot. Live video is on the rise because people connect with people. So they're looking for more live video experiences, especially in addition to broadcasting your message live, but other live experiences. Engagement is much more effective. 100 engaged followers or fans on your Facebook page is way more better than having a million people and nobody's talking. The people think it's numbers. It's not about numbers anymore. It's about quality over quantity. It's about engagement and not just saying you have millions of followers, because technically you can just buy a million followers. That engagement is something that's authentic, and that engagement is what we look for in the actual, traditional church experience. It's about engaging and building up their lives. So that's how it works. Additionally, hold on real quick. Okay. There we go. All right. For the number of users, we're looking at these particular platforms. Facebook has 2 billion users, again, continually and always growing. Snapchat has 150 million. Facebook Messenger is one of the key ones that I was talking about here that you don't really hear about. And Facebook Messenger has 1.2 billion users. Now, one of the key ways people are thinking, like, how do I reach people with Facebook Messenger? Well, you have technologies now like Facebook bots and ways that you can advertise in people's Messenger inbox that 1.2 billion people are using, that you can reach people and talk with them and connect with them. Or there's ways that they connect with your Facebook fan page using Facebook Messenger. So consider that as a way to reach people when you're thinking about how you want to build out the social media strategy. LinkedIn has 500 million users. Instagram has 800 million users and continually growing. Well, again, one of the most effective platforms. Pinterest at 200 million. YouTube has 1 billion users and 1 billion unique views. YouTube is the second largest search engine on the planet, and is one of the most effective ministry tools that a lot of churches overlook. Reason being, they just don't understand why when I throw my videos up, nothing happens. It's always a strategy to stuff. Just throwing stuff up on a particular platform is not the most effective way to make it work. YouTube, we're going to talk about later on, is one of the most effective platforms, and you already have the content, because week in, week out, churches are generating this content. They just don't know how to effectively position it so that they can reach the people that they want to. They just think throw it up and they're going to find it. And then Twitter at 330 million plus. So these are the networks that we have. But of course, the question is always, which network is the best for your organization? Which network gets results? And the answer is all of them if you use them effectively. So it's not that some churches use Facebook more effectively than they use Twitter. Some churches use Twitter more effectively than they use Instagram. Again, it's about where your audience is at, and you can really ask them in the congregation and just say, hey, raise your hand. What platforms are you on? And then with the people that are working for your volunteers or your staff, what platforms do they understand and know how to utilize? It's not effective if your entire congregation loves Facebook and you want to start a Twitter ministry, and then also your volunteers don't know how to use Twitter effectively. So therefore, you really have a disconnect in how the people you have that are able to utilize the social networks and the people that you want to reach that are not even there. You have to look at how effective those two can be when the people that you're trying to reach on the network that you're utilizing and the people that you have on staff or volunteering know how to use those networks as well. So when you're looking at a strategy, it's not just, not just setting up Facebook and Twitter profiles and hope they see you, but you need to develop a content and an actual social media strategy. By social media strategy, I mean, specifically, how can you visually tell your story? How can you visually connect with people on these platforms? What type of visual content does your ministry have that you can get access to and start to push out on these social media channels? Because again, people are very visual on these platforms, and visual content is being favored over other types of text-based content. Here's the actual strategy that you guys can use. One of the ones that we utilized earlier at a lot of the ministries I've worked with is strategy is it's inspiration, information, communication, consistency, and diversification. And by that I mean inspiration, inspirational content. And if for anybody here who may not be a church, you may be a parachurch organization or just a faith-based organization, but not necessarily a church, then you're looking at more of education as opposed to inspiration. Educating people about your mission, educating people about what your organization does. Next is information. The same information that they could get if they came to a service, make sure that information is distributed via the channels and the platforms that your ministry is on. Communication. When people reach out to you, reach back. Don't make it where it's just a one-way conversation. That means that's not social at all. That's just a marketing channel that you're trying to talk to them on, and don't care what they say back. Consistency. Be consistent. Don't start on any platform that you won't consistently push content out on. Don't just get on Facebook or Twitter just to say you're there. You have to actually consistently put content out on it. And then diversification is don't put all your eggs in Facebook's basket. While Facebook is awesome, it's great, 2 billion plus users is awesome, they will shut your page down for a violation that you may or may not know about. So do not put all your eggs in Facebook's basket and think that Facebook is the only social media platform that you need to utilize. All right. Next is who will manage it all. You need to make sure you understand whether you have a volunteer or a staff member of who's going to manage it all, whether you're using a software platform like Hootsuite or Buffer. You need to understand who's going to manage your social media strategy, okay, and make sure it's effective. And then who is your audience, as we talked about earlier. But stepping back to who will manage it all, one of the key things that you need to do is, as you're managing this, someone who will manage to be the manager of getting the content that you're going to put out on social media, someone who's going to be the manager of actually posting the content, scheduling the content, interacting with the audience, but also getting the analytics so that you understand how effective your campaign is and your strategy is so that you can adjust. You'll see that certain things on Facebook work that don't work on Twitter, so you need to be able to adjust, but not, and I'm sure Sly has been in this position as I have as well, where you're in a meeting and you're talking about something that has to do with social media, and someone is giving their opinion on what they think will work and what they hope will work. And while that's great, the numbers and the analytics and the data tells the story. That actually tells the truth. While we love people's opinions and everybody has them, we try and focus on the actual data that tells the truth of the story and how we can move and adjust accordingly based on the data and the analytics. And I'm not talking about something that's extremely complicated. A lot of the larger ministries that you all see, and you think that they have these multi-million-dollar budgets for social media, for digital ministry, that's not quite how it works. I've worked with them. They don't have these multi-million-dollar budgets. They just have, effective people that make the way they're doing things look like it's really expensive, but it's not. They understand where the platform and the softwares are, like Buffer and Hootsuite, that might be $5 or $10 a month, that looks like and gives you $1 million results. They understand that if you have graphics that look like they're done by people who charge thousands of dollars, you have effective graphics, then your content strategy looks effective and looks better and gets more engagement because it looks like you spent a lot of money on it. That's the thing, and that's the game. A lot of stuff is free, but you have to do it focusing on the quality of it that you put out and not just trying to get stuff out just to be out. All right. So now let's look at this effective way to get started. Again, if you're going to try and figure out, you're a ministry and we're starting from nothing, this is the way you want to do it. Your Facebook fan page is first, then you focus on Twitter, then you will with YouTube, then Instagram, then Snapchat, and then Pinterest. This is, I think, is one of the most effective ways that I think that progressively, this is how you should build out your social media strategy. Again, this is not the end all of end all. There are other ways to work with this, but this is, I've seen, has been the most consistent strategy as far as building out from nothing to having an effective presence on each of these platforms. Again, so with your Facebook fan page, I'm not gonna go through the entire ways of how to use Facebook. I think people are pretty familiar with that. But again, the thing I want to focus on here is post Facebook fan page, not profile page, not friends up to 5,000. I mean an actual fan page. And then also to understand that when you post on a fan page without boosting or without paying, you're looking at maybe up to 2% of the people, subscribers, seeing it. So that's pushing it. Basically, Facebook wants you to pay to reach people, whether you have 100 people, whether you have 1,000,000 people, it doesn't matter. When it comes down to percentages, they're making that very small. The way that you can increase engagement in addition to paying is when people comment on your page, respond. The more comments you have that on your page, the higher it'll start appearing in other people's feeds. You have to look and focus on that engagement, because people say something on your page, respond, and that'll increase how people can view it. Okay. Another thing is make sure that the cover photo and the profile photo, are consistent with the branding of your ministry. And I can't reiterate enough how important it is to have high quality branding for your ministry. I mean, a logo that is done that looks great, other photos and other marketing materials that represent your ministry that is that looks like your ministry operates at a high level, and your online presence is just as important, impactful, and clean as your offline presence, because you wouldn't invite people to a dirty church. So don't let your online presence look like you just don't care. Now, with your Twitter account, same thing. Just make sure the branding is consistent, but also understand how to use hashtags. Hashtags is what helps get the visibility of the stuff you're putting out on Twitter as well as on Instagram. So when you're putting out these messages, whether it be your daily devotionals or whatever messages you decide to put out, use hashtags based on the topics of the message that you're trying to get out, as well as where the people at that you're trying to reach. Okay. Additionally, YouTube, one of the key things with YouTube, hold on, let me go back with that. Let's see. Oh, can I get back with that? With YouTube, one of the key things I want to focus on with you all is when you put stuff on YouTube, that's not the end of it. You have to understand that YouTube is owned by Google, and therefore it's utilized like Google is. By that, I mean, when you put a video up, you have to use the tags. You have to put these tags in and use an effective description so that people, when they're searching on YouTube for whatever the topic is of your message that your pastor has preached or something like that, they can find that. Again, the tags and the description and the title of the video has to be effective. Don't just throw it up and say, Sunday message, June 13th, 2015. What is it about? So when someone's searching for, if the pastor's talking about faith and someone's really having a faith issue, how are they going to find that? They're not going to search for June 15th, June 23rd, 2015. That's not an effective way to do it. As well as with the tags that you see in the bottom of faith, the name of your ministry, other issues that you want to reach people with, as well as what are the overall themes that flow with your church and the mission of your church and so on. That's the type of stuff you want to put in here to make it effective, as well as organize your videos into playlists. So when people come there, it looks like it's organized the same way we would see the top-notch, YouTube pages that we see to have millions of subscribers. To do this stuff, it's not expensive. It doesn't even cost money. It just takes time to do it effectively on the same level that these organizations that have millions of subscribers do. So again, you want to follow their example until you're able to have the same results that they have. Instagram's the same. Again, we talked about that, 800 million people, et cetera, but Instagram is heavily driven by hashtags, and a lot of organizations don't utilize that nearly as effectively as they could with the pictures and the videos that they do. But do not sleep on Instagram stories and how effective those are. Instagram stories is one of the most fastest growing new ways that people are connecting in the social media space, with addition to the fact that when you put something on Instagram story, you can also put on your Facebook page as well. So now you're looking at working smarter, not harder, because you're getting the message out to multiple platforms and increasing your engagement. All right. Now, for people that want to know best time to post, this is effective in the terms of just being able to consistently get content out. But because of the algorithms, whether you post something in the daytime or nighttime, it's going to appear in people's feed, based on how they connect with your organization. So the times are not nearly as important as consistently putting stuff out. And so that's why I focus on this, like, hey, make sure you put this information out consistently 3-4 times a day on these platforms, because I want you to grow your audience and have a variety of content that is out there. Again, how often to post? Facebook or Instagram 2 or 3 times a day will be great. Work up to that. If you can't get that done now, get something up at least once a day and then work up to these numbers. Twitter up to 4 times a day, and Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, 1 to 3 videos a week. Make sure you can try and get those up as well, if you can. Again, it's about not trying to do everything, but doing something. Again, and the story, the basic thing is tell your ministry story visually. The way social media and even digital ministry as a whole, the way it is going towards now is, when we were younger, we saw these picture books and we watched stories that were told visually via picture books and other ways. And so now, as we got older, we started to read books and see stuff that had less pictures. But now, if you want to connect with people and interact with people, they're going back to how they consume content when they were younger, which is visual. Photos, videos, graphics. That's the way people want to stay connected, and the way people want to connect with your organization. Okay. And then lastly, as I'm closing out, analyze, optimize, repeat. Analyze how you were doing, things that you were doing, how effective it was. Optimize how you can do it better and get better results, and then repeat the process. There are a lot of organizations that are still trying to figure out, churches are still trying to figure out how to utilize these social media platforms. And by the time they figure out, a new social media platform will have emerged, and then have to figure that out as well. The thing is, just start getting a consistent strategy of pushing out content and starting to grow it, and just get started. And then from there, start to analyze, optimize, and repeat the process. But of course, you want to know where social media is going. So here's what's coming down the line in the next 3 years. You have more short form video, which by that I mean the videos that you see now that are going viral that might be 2 or 3 minutes long. So short form video, and stay connected with people like that. We'll see more chat bots. Chat bots was what I was talking about earlier, how to connect with people inside their Facebook Messenger. VR, virtual reality, is coming. Facebook is actually leading the charge with that, where there'll be virtual devices where, instead of leaving comments and messages on Facebook news feeds, you'll actually be talking to people in these virtual reality chat rooms. And then more pay to play. They're just gonna, the more social media evolves, the more it's gonna become a even more multi-billion-dollar, even trillion-dollar industry. And so and basically you'll be paying people to get their attention, because we're hit with over 5,000 to 10,000 pieces of content daily. So with that much content hitting us, it's hard to get people's attention and get them to focus. So that's why we know that our messages are impactful, life-changing, important, but we have to take it to them and get it in front of them on the platforms that they're on, using the devices that they're using, and reaching them using the methods that are consistent and that they're using, because we know the message is just as important. Okay, so thank you for that. I appreciate your time. Now let me go over here and look at some of these questions in here. I'm seeing how big of a social media team do I need for my ministry? So how big of a social media team do you need? That depends on how many platforms are you on, and how big of an audience you're trying to grow. Let me give you an example. So some of you all should be familiar with the Potter's House, TD Jakes Ministries. we had a social media team there when I was there of about one, two, three, maybe about four people, I want to say, and he had millions of followers. But then again, he got involved in it after it grew to about 1 million, maybe, or something like that. So I would say start off with at least two people and then grow from there. But we had millions of followers and maybe four or five people on the team, so it wasn't a huge number of people that were doing that. And it wasn't like social media was the only thing we did. We had one person that did social media full time. Everybody else who was on there was also doing other digital ministry things, like the stuff I laid out when we were talking about the iChurch method. So that would be one of the key things to think about. What are the best platforms and methods to reach youth? Okay, so statistically, youth are right now, and I will give this answer from the grown-up perspective of what statistics show, and then I'll give you an answer from what my 13-year-old daughter uses. Statistically, they're like, okay, they're on Instagram and they're on Snapchat. My daughter feels like Snapchat is the best thing that ever happened. So when you're looking at how to reach the youth, Snapchat has their attention tenfold. But as they're getting older and transitioning from teenager to more college, then they start to look at more Instagram. But they're on multiple platforms. So the most effective way that I would say to reach youth would be Snapchat, using I'm trying to think of those custom wallpapers, I think they're called, I believe. Trying to think of what the name is. Jump in, Sly, if you can think of the name of it, where you create these custom wallpapers for Snapchat. I think they're called. So,
yeah, you talking about the geo filters?
Yeah, the geo filters. That's what it is. So the geo filters is what I was talking about. Those custom geo filters are what Snapchat youth really love. So I would say create custom filters for the youth at your church and let them share, Snapchat stuff from your church that's branded with your church branding, but also with, maybe a hashtag that they like or something that they like that would make them want to share something that has church branding on it. So,
Jason, I got a question for you as well. Are enough churches using the youth to actually put messages forward or place messages on a Snapchat or Instagram? Are enough ministries actually doing that?
Are enough ministries actually using the youth to
just kind of put messages or posting and things of that nature to kind of just foster up more youth for the ministry?
Oh, well, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen the trust that I've seen in churches is not there as far as allowing the youth to really effectively be digital missionaries and share the message that's coming from the ministry. So you have the issues of, and I've seen some churches do it well and some not, but just to even get them to get buy-in to utilize volunteers and give them the trust to represent the ministry. You have that barrier or that obstacle to overcome. Then you ask them to say, hey, okay, utilize youth to reach other youth on behalf of the church and grow the youth membership. Well, that level of trust for them to trust that those youth will represent the ministry, that's a hard sell as well. So should they be doing it? Absolutely. I think they should be doing it with the youth that they trust and the volunteers that they trust. You have to trust people. And in order to really grow your online presence, you're going to have to delegate. Like, it can't be all through one particular gatekeeper. And Sly said that specifically, like, you have to be able to duplicate yourself. So, and I'm just using another word for delegate, duplicate and delegate. And so, yes, that is not an effective thing that churches are doing just yet. And they haven't found the ability to put the trust in the youth to be able to reach other youth. And we know when we were younger, we would listen to other youth before we listened to old people.
Right. I got one other question for you there.
Okay.
And this is more my personal, my personal question. It's some of the things because you and both Sly mentioned how important social media is. And it's absolutely very important. I absolutely agree with you 100%. Now, if churches are neglecting social media for various different reasons, because of the trust factor, the fear, and just different challenges that we deal with daily, but we're looking at a much larger organization in most cases. But if they are to neglect social media, what are the challenges that they could actually face somewhere in the future?
Well, it's not, I don't think it's, some of the challenges. It's going to be the challenges that we could statistically back up is how many churches do you see shut the doors or shut down or die out every year? So that's a measurable outcome, where you can see a church that has an aging congregation, and you can tell when you walk in, if they're not doing anything effectively to reach a younger demographic, online or offline, you know how the story ends. You're just prolonging the process. And so it's a tough reality that churches, are facing, and even the denial part of it, which is why I started off with the first thing: is church attendance declining or decentralizing? Because declining was the overarching theme that churches were trying to say. They just don't go to church anymore. They just don't go to church anymore. And cool, if that makes you feel comfortable, that's fine. But when you start to see that people are connecting to inspirational, faith-based sources in different manners, where they'll say, okay, well, I listen to this on podcast, I listen to this, and this, watch these YouTube videos of all these different pastors and stuff. It's like they're looking for content in the way that they want to consume content, because every other aspect of their life, they can consume stuff in the way they want to. But the church says, I need you to go back to your grandma's church experience and come to this sanctuary and sit here for 2 hours and listen to this message, and because that's what she did. And it's like, that's great, but I'm not my grandmother. So I want to be able to take my Jesus with me. So, now we can, but the problem isn't the people adapting technology, because the billions of mobile devices that are out here. The problem is, one, there's not enough people like me and Sly, and Alice and you, and Taquinda. There's not enough of us helping educate that, and that, we're trying to get more people involved. But also churches are resistant to change because they're just resistant to change.
That really, there's just kind of prolonging the inevitable, though. So you either change or the door's closed eventually. Unfortunately, I know it seems like a hard take, but the reality of it is, I think Sly and I were talking yesterday, a couple of days ago, briefly, is that there's a reality. There's a situation that the church is dealing with, and this is just across the board. And I think that if we don't make those strong moves, if you will, and to get involved with social media, and I think one of the things that Sly and I talked about also is that churches are a lot of times looking for money. They want to know what the bottom line is. Not so much looking for money, but they want to know what the bottom line is. And sometimes you can say things, but without saying them. But people sometimes want to know, well, okay, how much am I going to make? What is this going to bring me? What's my net increase is going to be for whatever reason? But, and it's understandable. But I think that reaching out to social media, more people, at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. And the byproduct of that, you will have increased tithes and offering.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a difficult lesson to learn if you've been successful at doing ministry for, 10, 20, 30 years, and you now have these young, whippersnappers that are coming in here saying, hey, here's these new digital ways to do ministry.
Right.
Then there's a pride factor, and of course there's a financial factor. And so, they're basically saying you have to evolve the way you've done ministry, even though you've been successful over the last 25 years. Well, yeah, it took 50 years for church to evolve to get to the point where the older pastors now were doing church the way they were. So now they've had their 25, 30-year run where they've done ministry. And by that, I mean radio ministry and TV ministry, since I got to get specific. I don't want to just give generalizations. TV ministry and radio ministry, even when TV ministry came on and was, the TV evangelist came on, there were pastors that were wailing against that. Like, that's going to change and that's going to take the gospel down, because radio ministry was the way to do it. Or we want to get people in the building, and TV ministry is going to mean they're never going to go to church again. And now we just got the digital phase of that, where they're like, now, they can just watch it on their mobile device or watch it on the computer. They're not going to come. And it's like that type of thinking is basically saying, I want to do church like they, did in the Bible, where everybody comes directly to, gather with us, and the orator talks to the congregation, which is great. But then you want to take that particular, Bible book and go preach from that. Like, no, get them scrolls out and parchments out and preach from that then. See, that you can't pick and choose what technologies you want to use from the Bible and what technologies you want to call the devil. That's not how it works anymore.
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting to see.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Caston, tell the viewers and listeners how to get in contact with you.
Yes, for y'all watching this live, appreciate you. For y'all watching this on the rebroadcast, appreciate you as well. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at Jason Caston, on Instagram at Jason Caston. Those are probably the most effective ways to stay connected with me, as well as through my website, ichurchmethod.com. And if you all want to download any of the things I talked about today, it's ichurchmethod.com/downloads.
All right, guys, we are going to take a break here for lunch here. Again, we want to thank Mr. Sly and Mr. Jason for both wonderful presentations. They did a great job. You can contact them for more information. And thank you for tuning in, and we will be back in about an hour or so right after lunch.